Conservation Commission hearing. First one up's 34 Bond Hollow Road. Kurt Kramer.
Did not get a response,
No.
so.
All right.
Bob went there Saturday, so he can maybe update you.
Yeah, they had a Ramshorn Landscaping Service was up repairing the under drain that was installed at the toe of the slope in the back of the house. And they were also preparing a small pad right there by the turnout in the driveway for a garden shed. They weren't working within the buffer zone, and I don't think there's a problem.
Because the drain behind the house is outside the buffer zone.
Yeah.
And if was the shed on this side,
Yep,
down here,
yep.
then they're out of the buffer zone. There's already subsurface drain approved at the toe of the slope that wraps around and discharges right here. So it's.
Well, when they repaired it, just for the piece they repaired, they're discharging the other side now.
Discharging to this side now?
Yeah, right next to the roof drain.
Okay. So it's gonna come down this side. Is
And,
that gonna affect the septic system at all?
no,
Think so?
no, there's a plenty of grade change there between that. As I say, it's the same place that the roof leader discharges. And they've, we're in the process of seeding it. They're gonna put a little bit of erosion control blanket on the slope and dress it all up.
$32 Central Turnpike. Something about a dam. Nobody for that either.
Again, this is a letter that was sent out by the assessor's
Yep.
office.
So, nobody here to speak on the
Yes, they are.
23R? Yeah.
Sorry, we can't hear.
Okay, sorry. I speak quietly.
Yeah, we can't
Well, it's the air
check
conditioning
that.
makes it louder.
For the record, your name, sir?
Excuse me.
For the record, your name?
My name is Henry Lane, and I'm here this evening on behalf of the Roby family. They've received a letter from the board indicating that you'd like to talk about the dam.
Yep.
What we used to know as Casey Brook. I don't know what you're calling it these days, but
I'll go with your name.
yes, this is an informal meeting. Some interesting things have developed in this situation. I know that the Robys were here some time ago. There was some issues with beavers that had dammed up outlet to the old dam apparently, and were creating a flooding problem downstream, upstream. And as you may recall, or may not recall, at that point there were some issues about access to the dam property. And as a result of that, the Robys asked me to take a look at, see if we could find some way to get access to that property so that they could do whatever needed to be done. So we undertook some research to see, look at the history of the property and et cetera, to see if we could locate a way to get there. And we came up with a very interesting situation, which is that in fact the Robys don't own the dam. The Robys family did once own the dam, or their ancestors did, but back in the 1860s they actually sold the dam to the Dudleys. And although subsequent deeds in the Roby chain reference the dam, in fact they no longer owned it, and you'll find that the dam is now in the Dudley chain. And we didn't run it all the way to today, but we ran the title up into the estate of Mary Dudley, and as far as we can determine, the dam is owned by the heirs of Mary Dudley. And I know the Dudleys still own the adjacent property. And I guess at this point, our position is that if there's a problem with the dam, it's not the Robys' problem, it's the Dudleys' problem, and the next letter should be sent to the Dudleys, and they're gonna have to address it because we don't own it.
You say you stopped the title search on the dam at some point. Any particular reason you didn't bring it to
Well,
date?
We didn't bring it up, we bring it up to the 1930s, I think, at that point. As I say, it's the deed from Dudleys to the Dudleys includes the dam parcel. We ran it to the 1930, 1935. But at that point, we had established that we hadn't owned it for 50 years already, so there was no reason for us to do a title search on the Dudleys property. I sent a copy of our research and our results to the town assessors, asking them to update the records, along with copies of the deeds, including the deed, the Dudley deed that includes the dam property. So, and I have a copy which you're welcome to have for your records.
And we have the assessor here today. And you agree with the statements being made?
Well, you have a letter in front of you that Mr. Nunamarker wrote, and what we requested was a clear title. In a while back, when the Robies first came up, I was at the counter and Wanda,
Yep.
and the father said he owned the dam, and they'd been taxed on that land. I realized the Dudleys, are any of them here? I realized that they own the land all the way around, and, but we did ask Mr. Lane for a clear title. And then we're more than willing to change the name, as Nick wrote, but we don't have a clear title. And Nick researched back, which he does for a living too. He is a surveyor, and he has walked all the property in town along with David LaValle. We cannot, by law, change the name without a clear title, or the Department of Revenue will be after us. So I disagree. The Dudleys have told me they don't own it. First time I met the Robies, they said they did. So again, we're back at the same place. Without a clear title, I can't change the name.
Sir?
Well, I appreciate the assessor's problem, but it's our position that they have erroneously assessed it to us. We do not own it. They have the deed showing that the Dudleys do own it. If they need a clear title search, they're more than welcome to do it. We have no authority to do a title search on Dudley's property. I mean, I'm an attorney. I have an obligation. I can't just go out and certify title to other people's property. I just can't do that. I don't have the authority to do that. I can't go to your property and issue a certificate of title on your property without your permission. If the Dudleys want to commission a title search, I'm happy to do it, but I can't do it because the assessors have asked me to do it. They have the ability. Nick is a very capable title examiner. He certainly has the ability to do it. I've given him the starting point, and he can determine, who the properly assessed person is. We have demonstrated that, in fact, it is not us. It's not our obligation to prove who should get the tax bill. All we need to do is prove that we don't get it. And I think I've given him more than adequate evidence to show that the Robies do not own it. And as to who owns it today, that's a determination that the assessors are going to have to make, because I don't have the authority to do that. If they want to hire me to make that determination on their behalf, I suppose I can do it. But I can't unilaterally go out and certify title to somebody else's property any more than you could go out and survey your neighbor's property. I just can't do that. So, we're sort of between a rock and a hard place, but it's the assessor's job to determine ownership for assessment purposes, not the neighbors.
Mr. Lane, I do disagree with you. The Department of Revenue says that we assess the property to who we have the deed. We had the deed that the Robies owned it. Now, Mr. Nunamarker is a surveyor, but he also works with Thompson and Liston. He cannot do a title search without them requesting it from Thompson and Liston, not the town. Town of Sutton will not pay for a title search. They've told us that before. It is too costly. It is up to the owners of the property to prove whether they own it or not the assessors. I beg to differ with you on that. You are a lawyer, they can hire you to do the title search. We cannot as assessors. It's against the law for us and the town to put out that money for a title search.
And you have a copy of the package that I just gave to the Conservation Commission showing the deed from and this is to Mary Dudley, showing that she has title to the dam. You don't need anything else. You can assess the Dudleys or the heirs of Mary Dudley if you don't want to do any further research, but I've given you the deed, the Dudley's deed to the dam. So if you need a deed, you have the deed.
So why are the Robies telling me that they own the dam?
Well, the roadies are going to sit behind you now and tell you that the title search shall leave it done on their behalf in the
You
case.
get us the title search, and I'm sorry, I didn't mean to
You have it.
interrupt.
You have
No,
it.
I don't have a copy of that. I have Mr. Unimark's letters and all of his research back 180 years, and we are still in the fog about who's the owner. So we will still assess the Robies for it, and we can't change our records according to the Department of Revenue.
Well, the Department of Revenue doesn't.
They
determinations
control
of
my
title.
office, and you should know that.
You
Mr.
told me
Wayne.
now that you need a deed, and I've told you that if you look at my letter, you will see that I've included the Dudley deed, so you have what the Department of Revenue says you need to change the assessment. There's
I
very
think
little else I can do. other
Mr.
than give you-
Nunemacher requested that from you, and we never got it today. Maybe you just brought something in, but we haven't had
No.
a chance to review that, and so we're not changing anything, and maybe my board will be back to you, but I can't change anything. I do not know what that says that you just handed the secretary.
It's the same thing I sent you, which is a deed from James Dudley to Mary Dudley of the dam,
Well,
1935.
I'm not arguing that, but I don't have that from you. If I did, I would have it with me here tonight.
Well, it's checked with Mr. Nunemacher, I'm sure he will give you the copy that he has. of
Is
the
it
deed.
tax title insurance on this?
There's no title insurance, no. You know, this land has virtually no value, obviously. It's more of a burden than a benefit. Nobody's gonna buy title insurance on a burden, it's just crazy. It's, you know, same reason that nobody's ever done any serious title work.
Wasn't ever mortgaged?
Not in the last 200 years. I mean, when it was a dam, you know, there was a mill there back in the early 1800s, it may well have been mortgaged, but we don't
Not
find any
recently.
evidence of a mortgage in the last 200 years. You know, the economic viability of old mill dams is, you know, a lot of history. But as you know, you've been shown already, the Dudleys acquired all that land back in the 1860s, including the dam. For whatever reason, you know, somebody mixed up the descriptions, and all the land on the pond except the dam itself was assessed with the Dudleys. It's just an oversight by the you know, by whoever was doing the research for the assessors at the time. But, you know, they have the deed to the Dudley's deed to the dam, and that's where the assessment would be. So, you know, from my point of view at this point, we don't own the dam, we have no authority to do anything on the dam, and if something needs to be done, you're gonna have to consult with the Dudleys, because it's their dam.
And our records will not allow it, but I will show you my map, just to give you some idea that the Robies do own property right next to the dam. So I highlighted this. This is the Robie property, and again, the Dudleys do own all that. But the dam's here, and this is the Robie property. So I can't change my records, especially when they both came up father and son, and did let me know. So the Robies own this, and the yellow I highlighted where the dam is. They did both say that they own the dam. Now, I can't change, and I hate to bring your secretary in, but she was standing at the counter the same day. We all heard them say, they own the dam. I can't change anything without a clear title, and I don't have a clear title.
Sir?
I'm Kurt Roby, I'm the son of my dad.
Yep.
Curtis Roby, who owns the dam. Doesn't own the dam. They don't own the
And
dam.
we're not gonna decide who owns the dam.
Right, we need a
The
clear
issue,
title.
the issue is this. The first time we were notified by this board about 2 years ago that there was an issue, we came up to get some records and find out what was going on. We stopped at the assessor's office. I was brought up, I was shown the deeds that we have that say that the land passed to us from the Pierce family many years ago, who was our distant relative and so forth. In the process of trying to fulfill some of the requirements that this board had, and further as a result of a complaint that was made to the State Bureau of Dams, we had the State Bureau of Dams go in and survey the dam. And in order to gain access to that property, I went and asked David Dudley, if we could have access to go into the property. Had a very difficult time getting access into that property. We told him that we felt we had a right of way to that property, and the previous survey had been done by James Shaw. I think it's James Shaw, isn't it?
And his successor as well.
And the successor showing that we did have a right of way to the property. However, Mr. Dudley refused to agree with us on that. He did allow us to go in, the Bureau of Dams, to go in and assess the property, and the Bureau went in and they did their assessment. And
When you say assessment, you're talking about the condition of the dam?
yeah, they have to do a formal state assessment of
Yep.
the dam, because it's a dam, the height, so forth and so
Yep.
on, to see if it qualifies for any of the state regulations. It did. It's listed as a low-impact dam. We had to file with the State Bureau of Dams, because at that time, we had a deed that said that we owned the dam, all right? We then tried to hire we worked with the town here, and got a suggestion on a person to come in and trap the beavers on the dam so that we could clear the spillway. We hired that gentleman, he came in, got the appropriate approvals through the town here to trap the beavers. He trapped over 16 or 18 beavers on that particular area, but he said he could not get them all because some of them were out in hutches on land that was owned by Mr. Dudley, that was out in the water that he didn't have access to, so he would do the best he could to eradicate the beaver problem. Then we had the issue that the beavers had put a dam on the spillway, and that was the cause of the backup of the water. At that point in time, I asked Mr. Dudley if we can go in, and in the meantime, Mr. Dudley posted the property, no trespassing on Central Turnpike, where we thought our right-of-way was. And he informed me personally that I had no right to go on his land, and if I chose to do so, that he would call the town police and have me arrested. So at that point in time, I asked him, can we have Mr. Spiker, who we hired, who was the beaver trapper, come in and do that? And he said he would allow that. So I worked with Mr. Spiker the first time to open up the spillway as part of his cleaning up the beavers, because I couldn't get in there. We still don't have any way to get onto that land, which is the easiest, through that area. So at that point in time, we decided we needed to find out legally if we had a right-of-way or not. That's when we hired Mr. Lane. We hired Mr. Lane to come in and perform a title search, look at the deeds, to try to determine whether or not we have a legal right-of-way to get in there, so that if these issues came up in the future, we could do that. Now, we've spent over $3,000 in there already, between filing paperwork with the State Bureau of Dams, Mr. Spiker, and Mr. Lane's services. Mr. Lane has found out, as part of his legal title search work, that there's issue. That dam was sold by a legal guardian of our heirs to a past relative of the Dudley family 2 years after it was transferred to the owner that originally got Lewis Pierce, transferred it to his kids. And that legal guardian of the 2 kids then sold the land, filed a separate deed with the Registry of Deeds, which you now have a copy of, stating that sale included all of the land belonging to the 2 children that owned the dam property, based upon the other deed. And then Mr. Lane found that in 1935-ish, that there was record with Mary Dudley in the deed that was transferred between the Dudley family to Mary. It expressly points out the land of Sarah and Charles Pierce to the Dudley family as part of that transfer, and that's the dam property, based upon the first deed. So unfortunately, our relatives, we can't speak for them. It was a long time, but it's been quitclaim deed all the way up through since that time. I don't think anybody has had any issue with it. You know, the interesting thing is that at one time, we were all related. But we
You
aren't
still
anymore.
are.
We aren't anymore. Well, we are somehow, but long ago. But that's what precipitated the whole thing. But at no fault of ours, at the time that we came to the assessor's office, we assumed we did own it. But we have now found out that we don't, and thanks to Mr. Lane's work. So what we're trying to do right now is correct that situation. And we don't really want to spend any more money on the dam if we don't own it.
It might be in your best interest to prove you don't own it, though.
Excuse me?
It might be in your best interest to prove with a title right up to date that you don't own it.
Well,
But anyway,
well, we've got it up to 1935, and I can tell you there was no transfer between Dudleys and my relatives after that time.
I went down there
Yep.
a few years ago when they cleared the dam. They cut all the vegetation off of it
Yeah.
and so forth.
Cleaned it up.
And I believe you thought you owned it then
We did.
when I was down
We
there,
paid
you
a lot of
know.
money for that, yeah.
So my recommendation is, next meeting, ask the Dudleys to come in and see what they're prepared to do.
I think there might be some here. No?
No.
No. And I don't know how to resolve it myself. It's not my area of expertise.
It has to be resolved as to who's responsible
Yeah.
for the dam, but that's not up to us,
Yeah.
really.
But we're between, as I say, that rock and a hard place. We have established we don't own it, so just going onto the property would be trespassing, which we can't really do, at our risk, even if we wanted to. So at this point, there's really nothing we can do to address the situation.
I guess we send a letter to the Dudleys, maybe.
What's the severity of the flooding? Is it real bad? The flooding upstream, is it,
I don't know.
It's flooding the backyards of all
Sure.
homes.
The last time the flooding took place, it backed up probably 3 or 4 feet onto woodland in the back area. But it was getting close to the top of the dam, and that's when, we took the action that we did with the state. However, I assume that that's where it's at again, if it is that high. My recollection is that this time, the same gentleman that walked his dog the first time, whoever that may be, I guess he has a legal right to walk on the land even though it's posted, informed Mr. Dudley that again, the beavers were back. But that's the situation. As I say, the state has it, or was going to list it as a low-impact dam, because there's very little danger to any kind of persons or property downstream, because it's all woodland all the way into Northbridge.
Brandon, you got anything on this?
We're talking about property, legal ownership
Yeah.
issues, not
No,
my
not
bailiwick,
yours.
but I do think there might be some merit in inviting the Dudleys in
Yeah.
to see what they say. And it's not the commission's problem until there's a catastrophic event. You never know when that's going to happen, but then if and when it does, the
Well-
Conservation Commission is going to be involved.
Apparently it's already happening, that's why we're talking about it.
So
Well, there's
I mean,
flooding
it's
taking
not
place.
something you want to let linger, because if the problem's already happening, something's got to give pretty soon.
From the tax assessor's point of view,
Well, if Mr. Lane has a clear title, we will be more than happy to change the ownership, but it's got to be a clear title. The town will not allow us to do that research on any property in town. Because of the cost, the town is not going to foot it. So it's up to the owners or their lawyers or their representatives.
Okay. So the question is, what if no action is taken by the landowners, the Robies and the Dudleys?
that's why I asked how severe it was. Is it a public health issue? Could it back up into people's septics and flood those out, or?
Don't know. I haven't been out there, and evidently I don't have access to get there to even look at it, so it's a bit of a question at the moment, but it's something I think should get resolved. And this is a unique situation.
I would say write a letter to the Dudleys and ask them to come in, see what they have to say.
Okay.
thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Anyone else to speak on this? Thank you for coming. Next up's 263 Purgatory Road.
Make a motion to waive the reading of 263 Purgatory Road.
Second,
All those in favor?
aye.
Good evening. For the record, I'm Dean Smith from Borrego Solar. I'm basically here tonight to give you an update on our project over off Purgatory Road. Since we last came to talk with you, we walked the site with Brandon and Ms. Smith. So there are some additional wetland areas that we were not aware of before, so I want to bring the commission up to date as to what we found so far. So, So this is the site plan that we presented to you at your last meeting. Purgatory Road down here, the creamery across the street, the firewood operation that the Van Macker's own that's adjacent to the site. So the darker areas were the areas that were mapped by our consultant in the first place. She originally walked the site last fall. It was a very dry part of the year. So she wasn't taking note of some wetlands that are more apparent now during the wetter part of the year, and walked with your environmental consultant and one of your members. So, where things stand right now, after we walked with your representatives, our environmental consultant stayed on site just to basically walk the perimeter of the areas that were discovered and give us an estimate of what they look like on our site. So she sent us some new points. These dark green areas are new areas of wetland that are up on the upper part of our site where we had originally planned our solar arrays, obviously. There also was discussion about a connection between the two fingers of the wetlands that were mapped here. So there's some additional wetlands here and some additional wetlands in the north part. These obviously are my main concern at this point. Again, saying that this is just an approximation at this point. We needed to come back to you, present that information to you, to try and determine what the possibilities are for steps forward at this point, knowing that there are additional wetlands there. Now, walking the site, there might still be some discussion, but in her opinion, there was no clear connection between these wetlands at the top of the grade and the wetlands below. There's a very steep grade there. There was no definable channel that she could find. So she's saying that she believes these to be isolated wetlands. Which I know from the discussions with Brandon that probably doesn't make a lot of difference under your wetland ordinance. So the yellow area, the bright yellow area that I'm showing is the 100-foot buffer around those. The site layout that we had provided to you was for a 2-megawatt system, which is what National Grid wanted there and what our contract specifies at this point. Obviously, we need to deal with this situation. So I'm here. I did have a discussion with Brandon about generally what the commission's positions are in terms of impacts, but I need to have some direct indication from the commission so that I can go back to our client and they can make a decision if they want to spend money to go out and have the mapping updated and try and go forward with a project. But we need to have some indication of what is a possibility and what simply is not. So obviously it's a big impact to our system. What I need to try and at least get some approximation of is if we did propose impact to some portions of these wetland resources up here and mitigate for them somewhere that's outside of the project, if that's a possibility, you know, what kind of ratios of replication you would be looking for, if it's even a possibility.
How big an area are you talking about with the wetlands?
It is, my best estimate is it's about 3/4 of an acre total. Now, one thing, this was basically was the minimum that they set as being a feasible project. There are some particulars that I'm not really party to from National Grid's standpoint as to why this particular area has to deal with their service areas and what their substation capabilities are their promises to the state in terms of what percentage of their generated power is renewable sources. So it is an important project to them. Being that it's directly for them, that they will own and operate, it's at least a quasi-public project in that regard. So what we might be able to live with would be to perhaps impact this smaller wetland area to the south and mitigate for that, maybe provide for a better interconnection of the remaining areas. Brandon says that there's not a lot of invasive species on site for us to eliminate in terms of mitigation for the upland impacts, but perhaps putting some portions of the uplands on site that are adjacent to the wetlands that under a conservation restriction, or coming up with some combination of mitigation that would be acceptable to the commission. One thing to point out, and I think we brought it up, this property and just a bit to the east was part of a map amendment that the town went through that specifically designated this as a solar overlay. And the owners and National Grid had to pursue that because it was such an important project to the utility. Obviously, if we were able to get approvals to go ahead and construct this, there would be a lot of tax benefits to the town. Payment in lieu of taxes is normally the way that those things go. So there would be some fairly large tax contributions to the town without really using.
That's
any
outside of
services.
us.
It's not really your jurisdiction, I know. So I'm kind of here to get some indication from the commission as to what kind of stance you would take.
You're up, Brandon.
Okay. I think I already told you the story of how I went back out there, and now it's on a plan. Colleen, the woman who was out there with the person who did the delineation, I pointed out the new areas that she missed. So at a minimum, we have those two areas. I haven't closed the book on a complete connection yet. It's really, she needs to complete the delineation. Has to do some detailed work with her wetland delineation transect forms. Submit that to me, and I go out there and check it. It's a very stony, bouldery kind of area. But I will agree that at a minimum, at least we have those areas, and on the screen above Dean's head is an example of what the wetter areas in that larger wetland on the north looks like. So that picture was taken in the middle of July, when I went back there with Mr. Smith and Colleen first week of August. There was still water in it. Sure. So it's a pretty wet area. And it's also, because it's so wet, and the fact that I saw little wood frogs jumping around, it's a potential vernal pool as well. All right, so then we talk about jurisdiction. Those two isolated areas, if they stay isolated, again, I haven't closed the book on it yet, will they be subject to jurisdiction by the state under the Wetlands Protection Act? Well, if they're isolated, if they're truly isolated, they have to hold a quarter acre foot of water. I'm not convinced they will, because it's been up, kind of on a slope. Obviously, it's holding some water. Didn't seem to be much, but again, that's something that Mr. Smith will have to do by proving it's not an ILSF, by showing topography and doing a volume calculation to show that you have less than 10,890 cubic feet, at least 6 inches deep. Okay, so that's something that needs to be done. At a minimum, I think they need to wait until next year to do a vernal pool investigation before anything gets around, at least on the north side. Then we talk about mitigation, but I think I'll stop there. That's the facts of the what we have. And then the question is, with these changes and what Mr. Smith is trying to negotiate here, are you even willing to entertain it? I gave Mr. Smith some advice today, and I told him, and you can correct me, on policies that in general, the commission does not like to see alteration in the wetland unless it's for a crossing in which there is no other way around, and stay at least 25 feet away. And from 25 feet to 100 feet, there has to be mitigation. I directed him to the impact avoidance and minimization statement, which offers some guidance on mitigation. Stormwater has been done, but stormwater is part and parcel of this project anyway, and it's required under the Wetlands Protection Act. And then we talked about invasive species, but the only invasive species I found was about 100 square foot patch of mile-a-minute vine, really not much at all, 10 by 10. Then we're kind of running out of options because this is a healthy, mature forest. And it reminds me of kind of what we had on Manchog Road 192 and 198. If you do any kind of replanting, it's really redundant. And you really, there's technically the gas line easement is on the property. It does have invasive species, but the gas line really doesn't need permission to go back and dig it up and mess it all up again. So I would kind of leave that out of the discussion. Then we talked about conservation, potential for conservation restrictions. And I said, well, go ahead and bring it up and see what they say, but...
We've already got control over most of it.
That's what I said. Don't even think about the wetland areas because they're already protected. And the next question is, well, how valuable is the rest of the land, the upland? And, you know, for example, the commission did a conservation restriction at 198 Manchog Road down by the water. That's a highly valuable spot for a buffer zone for water quality and wildlife. Here, most of the upland seems to be between the gas line and Route 146. And what's the chance of it being developed? I don't know. And again, if Mass DOT decided that they needed to take land by eminent domain, I'm sure if it was in conservation restriction, they'd have no problem getting the state assembly to overturn it. So I don't know how it's an option. I just don't know how valuable it is. That's for you to discuss.
And again, as Brendan mentioned, mitigation discussions about specifics of that are probably not really appropriate at this point. It's more of a high-level discussion about what impact on our project this is going to have. So, I mean, if there is just no option in your mind that any of that could be impacted, it's probably going to kill the project, and I'm going to have to go back and discuss that with National Grid. So it's more of that high-level kind of input that I really need to be able to go back and discuss it.
I personally don't see a whole lot of relief coming from us on that. I can poll the members and you can hear what they have to say.
That would be nice, just to get some input that I could use for discussion.
Put you in the hot seat first.
My question would be, is there any way to meet that, how many kilowatt, what was that number?
Well, we wanted a 2 megawatt system.
Is there any way to meet that criteria with staying 25 feet away from everything?
Well, the difficulty is that we don't have much way to get up to these upland areas up here to be usable. If we stayed 25 feet out of this, we'd have to do some analysis to see what kind of ultimate system size we could have. As you know, from the discussion before, the site is rather steep in areas, and it's very rocky. So there aren't
Boulders the size of my car.
There aren't a lot of opportunities for grading the site, so there are a lot of areas that we would have to avoid because of that. We would have to spend a lot of time with our designers to know what the ultimate size would be if we stayed 25 feet outside of this. If that would be the ultimate outcome, that would be something that the commission could consider in the long run. It might be worth us doing that so that we could at least quantify that for National Grid to make a decision. So it is a possibility. I mean, that would leave the lower portion of our site largely in place, and we just need to get access up into the upland areas further to the north and see what kind of ultimate system size we would end up with. I don't think it would be 2 megawatts, but it would be something larger than a megawatt. So I don't know where their cutoff really is in terms of what the feasibility of the project would be ultimately.
Bill?
25 foot is gonna be the issue.
Yeah.
We have a couple other similar situations in town right now that one of them is town property and they're going through it too, so.
Okay.
Just that wetland area on the top, we're not even talking about that, and that's right now, as shown, is developed within 25 feet, and you're taking the entire buffer zone.
Right, we would have to
So, I mean,
make
that-
revisions for that as well, yes.
So it's nearly everything in the upper 2/3 of the site is impacted by being in the buffer zone. And, I agree, we can't allow, I assume those two areas inside there are less, or is more than 5,000 square feet anyhow.
They each would be more than 5,000 square
So,
feet, yes.
that's all the state allows you to fill in or alter, so, we can't do anything.
Right, we wouldn't necessarily
Only
need
if
to
there's a-
fill.
Right, there's still some ifs, ands, and buts about it. Let's, right now, let's go on the presumption that these are isolated areas, okay? They're not, because they're isolated, they're not necessarily regulated under the Wetlands Protection Act, the state. They have to hold a certain volume of water, okay? Which Dean knows the procedure for doing.
Right.
My gut tells me they're probably not going to, because there are invert outlets that are probably gonna prevent it from getting the water that high. But
Is that
even
one of the
so,
ones you're talking about is a vernal pool?
it would be a vernal pool. Vernal pools are only protected if they're within a regulated resource area. All right, so if those ended up being isolated land subject to flooding because they hold a certain volume of water, then the whole thing would be considered a vernal pool, okay? If it's not an ILSF, it's just an isolated vegetated wetland, not protected by the Wetlands Protection Act, okay? There's a caveat. The 401, Section 401 Water Quality Certification Program, which is a federal program under the Clean Water Act, is run on the state level by the Mass DEP. And the Mass DEP requires replication for isolated wetlands in excess of 5,000 square feet under that program. And there's okay, so that's that. So it's not necessarily going to be completely forgotten by DEP. But there's another monkey wrench. In February, President Trump issued an executive memo repealing what's called the Clean Water Rule that protects isolated wetlands on the federal level. So I don't know how deep I want to get into this, but this goes back to a Supreme Court case about 15 years ago. And the question is under the Clean Water Act, are isolated wetlands protected? And it was a split court. There's 9 justices, 4 said no, led by Justice Scalia. 4 said yes, led by Justice Ginsburg, and then there was Kennedy, as usual, right down the middle. He said maybe, if certain criteria are met. So for the last 15 years, the Corps of Engineers have been engineering ways to figure that out. So when President Trump, he repealed it, and by repealing, he says the Corps of Engineers is required to follow Justice Scalia's opinion in that case, which means, the way I read it, isolated wetlands, even on the federal level, are no longer going to be protected. That rule repeal has not been finalized. So at the moment, we're running as usual, per usual. But that could change in the next, I don't know, let's say year. You never know how it goes. So if that's the case, logic tells me that if the DEP is administering
this federal program on the state level, but the feds get rid of that rule, then DP is out of a job in that respect. So this is a lot of balls up in the air. Got it?
Until one of the balls land, we're still acting as if,
Again, so that's state and federal jurisdiction. Local jurisdiction, both, even if these are isolated, they're both protected under the wetlands bylaw, and vernal pools, potential vernal pools like that one up there, which is in the larger one to the north, are considered wetland resource areas. Afforded all the rights and privileges there too. And then following all the policies, I would assume that no alteration in the wetland would be allowed. No wetland would be allowed in the 25-foot zone, and there would have to be mitigation adequate to a majority of the commission for that 25 to 100-foot mark. So that's the discussion.
that's around those as well as,
First, we gotta define
Right,
what we
he shows the
get.
yellow buffer zone around the two isolated ones,
Yeah,
but there's
that
also
also
everything else
is-
as well, and it's gonna take up a lot of land.
which basically encompasses everything in the top 2/3.
Yeah.
Right, in order to try and get close to the minimum size that they were looking
No,
for.
I
we
understand,
We
but
probably would have to.
we're just trying to
push into
establish the
25
area.
feet from the other wetlands that were originally mapped as well.
We're just trying to establish the area that you may have to mitigate.
We had originally tried to stay 50 feet away from the wetland resource areas that were given to us, originally mapped. But if there is a potential path to permitting this with the commission, we probably would need to push that into some of those upland areas in order to get some of those system size back.
Anything, Joyce?
Yeah, I have a couple of things. Number one, it's too bad you didn't come to conservation first before you went into all of the other planning. And when I did go to the planning board hearing in the first place, and I specifically asked, as you know, if there were wetlands there, they said to me, no wetlands. And,
I'm not sure.
I have an issue with being told one thing when in reality it's another thing. As far as mitigation, I don't see what you can do for mitigation there. I was out there with you. I saw it for myself. I don't know how it's going to work.
Okay.
Anybody else from the audience? Anything to say? I'm assuming you want to ask for a continuance.
Yes. I'll need to take the information from the board, see if National Grid wants to move forward or whether it's just not a possibility from there. And obviously, if they decide that they do want to pursue permits, we're going to have to get the consultants back out
Sure.
there to do real on-the-ground flagging and
How long do you think it would
and
take?
revised mapping. I don't think that would necessarily take a long time, but we would have to walk it again with Brandon. Probably more likely we should do that before we come back to the board so that we can make sure that our site layout is complying with the things that we've discussed here, at least to the maximum degree that we could. So it's really going to be a decision in their hands as to whether they feel like it's worth proceeding or not.
So you're thinking maybe a month before you'd want to
I
come
would
back?
say probably it wouldn't be the next meeting, it'd probably be 2 meetings.
I have some pictures of what the upland area looks like in the solar array. So it's mature forest. And it's a good quality forest. It's more of what it looks like. Ferns on the ground, trees. It's a healthy forest.
Make a motion to continue to September
20th at 7:35 PM.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for your time this evening.
It's 7:35, the 489 Central Turnpike Police Station, they're requesting a continuance.
So you missed one.
I missed one.
42.
Here we go, the important one.
Is that a read-in? No, it's a continuation. You can,
Make a motion to waive the reading of 263
No, you're...
42 Smith Road.
Okay.
That one too.
Second on that?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
On down.
Good evening, my name's Norman Hill. I'm a licensed civil engineer and a licensed land surveyor with a consulting firm of Land Planning, headquartered in Grafton. And with me tonight are Mr. and Mrs. Patrick. When we last met, we introduced to you the notice of intent, where they would have applied for permission to install a swimming pool. And on that day, we discovered that there had been an order of conditions, an order of conditions was issued on this property back in the year 2000. Now, they purchased the property about 3 years ago. In the past 2 weeks, the lawyer has discovered a certificate of compliance for that order of conditions. I have a copy for you here. This was issued in the year 2002. So we're pretty confident that the order of conditions that had been approved in the year 2000 has now been released. And this release is on record at the Registry of Deeds. Unfortunately, it wasn't on record under my client's name. We couldn't find it in their title.
Find it.
All this work was done by Robert Goodman back in 2000, 2001, so everything appeared on his title.
Great piece of paper, isn't it?
I know. I promise not to use the word damn next time, right? All right. So I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have about this project.
Do you have the drawings for it, so as we can look at it again? 'Cause
Oh,
I've
sure. I didn't
not
want
got
to,
that good a memory.
I don't want to keep you out too late, but sure. So here's the situation. Here's their house. The street's out here. Behind their house, there are about 7 very large sugar maples, and they don't want to risk damaging them or their root system. Further down the hill is a seasonal brook. This blue line is the seasonal brook. Currently, that's all lawn. The lawn goes right to the edge of the brook. So we've positioned the pool to provide you with a 25-foot no-disturb zone, which they are willing to let grow back with natural vegetation. So that would provide you with a 25-foot vegetated buffer that you don't have right now. Right now, it's all lawn. So that is essentially what we're trying to do. It's not a large pool. It's a gunite pool, saltwater pool. So if you need to backwash it, it's a filter system.
I believe we'd ask you to come back and say, why does it have to go there as opposed to somewhere else?
Yes, well, there's a street here. There was a possibility, the only other possibility that without crossing the brook was over here in this area. And that, again, would be in your buffer zone, and also be in the buffer zone of another seasonal brook over here, so it'd be in like 2 buffer zones. But you had mentioned also that there might be some cabling buried
Our
there.
electrical is all buried over there.
So they have, this property had been constructed to contain 7 large horse paddocks and a horse training center, basically. So they've run power out to those facilities out back. So I guess those cabling is buried in here. I wasn't aware of that, but yeah.
You're supposed to add the signs.
I'm sorry?
I said, we talked about adding signs to the drawings.
I thought that would just be in the conditions. We're willing to put
Well-
up the signs. Yeah, but I haven't added it to the drawing.
Okay, I mean, that's, all right.
Do recall that now. I apologize. I didn't add that to the drawing. I didn't revise the drawing.
Can be added to the order, just need to specify where they should start and how many feet apart they should be. And then we can talk about that as the construction moves. I would recommend a condition that, special condition that in the 25-foot zone it's going to be allowed to regrow, that invasive species continue to be suppressed and eradicated in perpetuity. So really 2 conditions, one on the signs and one on the invasive species. Like that's a little bit more related to that certificate of compliance. Thank you for getting me that certificate of compliance. The owners were benevolent enough to allow me and Joyce and Norm to go on a walk today of the entire property. I found a couple of inconsistencies with the approved plan from 2000. But the question is were those areas that there was additional work done, was that part, were those allowed as being in substantial compliance with the certificate of compliance, or was that done after? And one of the things we don't have anywhere on file is the as-built plan, which was required at the time. So I don't know if an as-built plan was ever submitted, but there was supposed to be one. So I've told the owners that I'm going to do a little more research just to see if I can figure out if it was done before or after by looking at the old aerial photos. But
They got a certificate of compliance for what was done.
for
But
what
you're
was
saying
done,
it
now we
was
gotta
work done
we gotta
afterwards.
figure out if, at least to the best of my ability, if the work that doesn't match up with the approved plan was done after
Well-
2002.
Did you find a as-built?
We did not.
How severe were these abnormalities?
I'll show you.
Minor?
Two crossings over a stream and one paddock within the buffer zone that's about 20 feet from the wetland when there shouldn't have been any alteration within 100 feet.
And the indoor arena was moved.
Yeah, but that was outside of jurisdiction, so there's just, within jurisdiction, there were a couple of stream crossings that were new.
Are the stream crossings well done?
They're all done, yes.
Are they well done?
They were
Yes.
very well done, actually.
All right.
There's a nice fieldstone retaining wall on either side of the path. There are, one of them is metal pipes, and the other one is PVC pipes. And found an additional metal pipe sitting in the woods next to the crossing.
In the paddock area, the paddock doesn't drain directly into the,
It drains toward the wetland. I didn't see any real erosion.
so it's not getting into the wetlands as such. I assume the
Not that I
paddock is
saw.
well cleaned.
Not that I saw
You touched,
today. I didn't see any evidence.
that's
of
what I
erosion.
say. Yeah, well, that's what I'm saying. Well, where I'm going with this is, these people only bought this place, how long ago?
2 years ago.
2 years ago, and, unless they did this work,
They didn't.
I think we got a certificate of compliance. Let's run with that and approve the,
There's a statute of
The pool.
limitations on enforcement. If more than 3 years go by between transference, you can't go after them anymore. And so the question I have, it was the Goodmans that did this?
yeah,
So if we presume that the Goodmans did it, who owned it?
Foreclosed on by a bank for 2 years before we bought it.
So how many years between the Goodmans and you?
5.
With-
Oh, no, I'm sorry,
Four.
in between the bank owning it,
And you owning it?
We're not sure how long the bank.
I think the bank
Is
owned
it
it for,
combined more than 3 years?
between
No.
the bank and us, yes,
Yes.
more than
That house sat vacant for quite a while when it was foreclosed on.
Moving right along.
I have no problem.
Sir,
That top paddock,
could I
David
identify-
Patrick, I'm sorry.
thank you.
The top
And you
paddock,
live at,
42 Smith.
thank you.
The top paddock in question, it's empty, we don't use it, we let it grow in as well. It's just a backup paddock for the 4 other horses, so it's really not being used. I don't know if that matters, but just making a point.
Yep.
So it's this paddock right here. The wetland is this semicircle right here. And Norm and I went, it's a steep drop right down to the swamp. So there was no paddock shown right here. The next paddock was shown, starting right around here. So this is closer than the approved plan. And that's basically where the plan stopped. But there's a perimeter path that goes all the way around this, and there's nothing on record for this area. You see the stream? The path goes over this stream, and then I think there's another little feeder stream with some recent-looking crossings. Whatever you want to do with it.
Sounds like it's past history and
it's on record and
Yep.
the commission's made a decision.
Yep.
So we're gonna issue an order of conditions, make a motion, to issue a court order of
You
conditions.
have to close the public hearing before you did that, Bob.
You haven't done that yet?
I'm slow tonight, I'm
He
sorry.
can't make a motion anyway. So
8:30's coming up fast.
It is.
you're going to make a motion to? No, you're not?
Close the public hearing.
I make a motion to close the public hearing.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
I make a motion, to issue an order of conditions for 42 Smith Road.
With the special
signs.
conditions.
Well, it's part of the special order of conditions that was so
Signs
mentioned,
and invasives in perpetuity. It's important that,
signs and invasives in perpetuity.
thank you.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much.
Who made the second?
I
Thank you.
believe that's the first time you've ever done
Good
it.
night, guys.
Where is it?
Second. He's done one before.
Had to do something to get things moving along.
When did this one open? Was it on the second? Did you open it?
735, 489 Central Turnpike.
Make a motion, can you continue to September 6, 2017 at 7:35 PM.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
You're out.
For this one.
Yep.
159 Dodge.
I think I gotta read this one in.
Do.
Got the routing slip for,
Yeah, hold on. This is one that needs, this is an ORAD, so if you need.
what's that?
That's the ORAD before that.
That's for the,
If you need any of those papers for 159. That's the first one they did. Supposed to get the delineations correct.
Sutton Conservation will hold a public hearing on Wednesday, August 16th, 2017 at 7:50 PM at the Town Hall, 4 Uxbridge Road, Sutton, Mass. Purpose of this hearing is to review a notice of intent submitted to the Conservation Commission by the Stockwell Farm LLC, Massachusetts. Project consists of construction of a single-family home with private well, septic, paved driveway, and associated grading and utilities on map 19, parcel 69, on 159 Dodge Hill Road, Sutton, Mass. Welcome.
Good evening. My name is Travis Brown, I'm Andrew Survey Engineer. Here on behalf of Stockwell Farm, address of 159 Dodge Hill Road. We're here, we
Plan signed,
filed a
too?
notice of intent for construction of a
Is this the right plan?
single-family house, private septic system, private well, and associated grading. So if you're looking at the plan, we have Dodge Hill Road here on the west. We have BBW, wet meadow in the back behind the proposed house. We're proposing a house in this location. Proposed septic system outside the 100-foot buffer in this location. You'll notice on the plan that I submitted, we had a proposed well out near this tree. We have since moved that to the rear of the property. This 50-foot buffer in orange, 100-foot buffer also in orange. There's a existing barn on this property, which is partially taken up by the proposed house, which in proximity to that wetland is here. So our proposed house is now outside the 50-foot buffer, further away than that existing barn. We have a raised structure here and a raised structure here. Overall on this site, there is less impervious area than there was to begin with. The locations of those barns added up to a little under 5,000 square feet of roof area. We're at around 2,800 square feet here. So overall, the impervious area on this site proposed will be less. We have not submitted this plan to the Board of Health as of yet. I wanted to get in front of the Conservation Commission and get your input.
feedback before pursuing Board of Health. I'd be happy to answer any questions that the commission.
Where was the proposed well?
So on the plan that I had submitted, it's out here. We have since moved that back to this location. I guess one other thing I should mention, there was an ANRAD done as part of this, and ORAD was issued, that you're probably aware of.
Have you done the impact and minimization review?
Yeah, provided a
They
statement.
have. I think the issues with this lot are minimal. There was already an RDA for the barn removal. There's been an ORAD, issued that verifies the wetland boundary. Because it's part of the other piece of property to the north, but it extended all the way down, so I looked at this too. So this wetland boundary is set in stone for the next 3 years. The house is being proposed slightly closer to the road. I think that the limited disturbance is reasonable and in line with what's already existing. A recommendation I would like to make is the line veers off to the northwest near the top.
Which line is this you're talking about?
The erosion control line.
Yeah, it's erosion control / limited disturbance
Yep.
line, see that right there?
Yep.
We need a completely enclosed limited disturbance, so that needs to go all the way to the other property line. My suggestion is to turn to the north and east along the 100-foot buffer zone line, because, there's no, if you don't need a permit to do it, why have you limited disturbance outside of that? So I would take a right-hand turn and go straight up to the property and show it going all the way up. That way, there's no open ends. Where is the relocated well?
The relocated well is right here,
Oh, okay.
about 27 feet from the edge of that
All
well.
right. I don't think that's an issue. And what are you going to be doing for infiltration of roof runoff?
Right now, we would daylight that stuff to drain. The overall recharge on this site would actually be more in these post conditions than it's been in previous years. So I believe that would be addressed as far as recharge, if that's your concern.
So you're going to let it run overland?
Yeah, so those will daylight. Similar to this foundation drain that comes here, typically they'll run a second pipe for the gutters, for the roof drains, and that'll daylight as part of that pipe, or next to that pipe.
Generally something the commission doesn't like to see. You like to see it put into a dry well or a rain garden.
Well, the pipe wouldn't be perforated around the foundation, right? That'd be a solid pipe.
Yeah, it will not be part of that perforated system, correct? Yeah, you don't want to introduce
Yep.
runoff to
And Mr. Morris is right here, and he had to build a rain garden, handle the roof runoff.
Yep.
So I don't know what you want to do with that.
Rain gardens are pretty.
That's it, just talk about what you want to do with the roof runoff. It's an easy change to amend the limited disturbance up the 100-foot buffer zone line, which could be done in approval contingent upon a revised plan within 21 days. So it's that, and whatever you want to do with the roof runoff. Otherwise, I think this is a permittable project.
Does that pipe that daylights out, is that a solid pipe or is it perforated?
Well, it's perforated around, so that's the foundation drain that I'm showing, but it would be solid from this point out.
So the roof pipe it's not perforated, it just comes out? Okay,
Right,
gotcha.
Right. Sometimes they'll tie it into that solid pipe.
Right.
Or otherwise.
I think
they
that's
can
how my
run
house
it
is.
Next to it.
How do they do that, Bob?
Tie it in or run it solid, thanks for
Oh, I have one more thing too. Go ahead.
You've always got one more thing.
I noticed on the drawing that you're showing 8-inch straw wattle, and it didn't look like it was the biodegradable. So if you make that change, I would recommend making a change to the erosion control detail showing 12-inch, 100% biodegradable straw wattle.
To I'm assuming that's what's on site now as part of the RDA.
Probably is, yeah.
Yes, every time we stress that it must be biodegradable, we go out there and it isn't, so it's becoming a
so-
very pet peeve of mine.
Ours is.
So I don't think we've seen you in this room before.
No,
But when they come in the nylon sheathing, they'll market it as being photodegradable, not the same thing. And the biodegradable is great because it's set it and forget it.
right.
Any thoughts on how we can get the roof runoff into the ground?
Yeah, I mean, I've done in the past in other towns, is I'll do a Coltech unit, which can handle up to 3/4 of an inch runoff for a storm. So it can take the smaller storms. Typically it has an overflow at the ground, so anything more than that would spill out.
Anyone here to speak on this? Joyce? Bob?
I can't comment on it, I haven't seen the drawings.
Are they in here?
That's not the point.
I'm not gonna look at the drawings in 5 minutes and
Right.
assess an opinion. All right, the drawings are supposed to be issued in a PDF to the members of the board a week before the meeting, so that we have an opportunity to read them and review them and not come in cold. And I haven't had an opportunity to see them, so I have no comment.
What about 20 minutes?
Yes, yeah. We used to ask if anybody knew their resume also, to see if they qualified, so I don't know if we have his resume.
Let's see if I can get his name. Travis, have you submitted your resume to the commission by any chance?
I know.
We'd like you to do that, just for the record.
How many years of experience do you have, Travis, doing this?
Well, I've been at Andrews for 10 years doing this type of work.
That's enough,
Survey.
thank you. Ten years and this is the first time we see you?
Yeah, they don't usually let me outside.
Keep you hidden? Other than not getting the drawings in, you did a pretty good job.
I apologize
Yeah.
for not getting additional
Yeah.
copies too.
I don't think works, you did split them too.
Yeah, I did submit them, I'm not sure.
Thursday, 2 weeks tomorrow.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Understand.
Yeah, another issue. So, we'd like you to continue this so as we can look at the drawings. Sorry. Next meeting?
September
Yeah, I
6th.
mean, we don't have a DEP number, I don't believe that's been issued,
Right.
but also we'd have to wait
You've
for
got
that.
other issues anyway. All
In
right.
the meantime, I'll get you a revised plan with
Yep.
the 4 things that we covered.
September 6th at 7:50.
Is there flags, signs shown in the drawing?
You'll know next time, won't you?
Right, no
Just-
signage.
Yep.
Opportunity for them to correct
Yeah.
it if there isn't.
It's on the plan,
Yeah, I
there's,
did put signage on the plan, and these pink
That's what,
locations.
yeah.
You know, they don't go there.
Well, that's all meadow, so we're calling for that to be maintained.
But isn't that also the wetlands?
That would be on the edge of the wetland, that's
Yeah,
correct.
and we require the signage 25 feet off the wetlands.
Yeah, well, what I'm saying is that tree line, the existing tree line is back here. We're calling for that area up to the wetland line to be maintained by mowing that has been done.
Well, that's,
In the
that's,
past.
that's new information.
That's on the plan. Existing
Okay.
meadow to be maintained up to wetland.
Okay, then what we need is a new limit of disturbance. And you have to show the limit, what we call the permanent limit of disturbance associated with any lawn, And then there's the limited disturbance, we call a limited disturbance associated with, like haying and cutting, which is, it sounds like that's what you want to do.
Right.
The commission hasn't had any issue with maintaining old meadows, wet meadows. Example, Putnam Hill Road for Gianni Romeo. But that needs to be explicitly called out on the plan and a limited disturbance put around that.
So leave this limited disturbance, but add one along that wetland line.
Right, so you, the limited disturbance you have, we're gonna call the permanent limited disturbance, which is the house, driveway, well, septic system, and lawn. All right, and then between that and the wetland boundary is gonna be the limited disturbance, which means you're limited in what you can do. And you're gonna be limited to haying, and maintenance of a wet meadow.
I don't think they're haying that now, I have. That you just, they've been mowing it and maintaining it, so it doesn't overgrow.
Is that
It'll be cut,
as in lawn?
as in it's an overgrown hayfield is what I gather.
So what do you want it to turn into? Do you want it to be lawn, or do you want it to be, continue to be maintained like a hayfield?
Continue to be maintained like a hayfield.
Okay.
The idea is not to leave it as long, so occasionally cutting it, not, as frequently as you'd cut your own lawn.
I would recommend maybe the once a year or twice a year after the birds have nested in the, because there's a lack of open meadow type of environment.
Yeah, well, if you're gonna go there, take a look at the aerial photograph. We've got a wet meadow all down here, okay? I presume that's been maintained on a yearly basis? Anybody speak to that?
Yes.
Okay. Does the commission have any problem with maintaining this as a hayfield?
I have a problem saying it's a hayfield, that's all.
Well,
Nobody's making any hay out there.
well,
Yeah.
okay, so how do you?
Very true.
It was previously a hayfield, going back quite a while.
Oh, yeah, but recently, nobody's been making any
Not just
hay out
cutting it
there.
once a year.
This is all wetland, it's a wet meadow,
Yeah. Yeah.
which has its own set of values for
Yeah.
wildlife. So the commission has already set precedents on this, I supported it to
Yeah,
begin
oh,
with.
yeah.
So if
And
you
I believe
wanna-
that's what their intent is.
Right, so if that's the intent, show it and label it very well. Which means you're gonna have to probably have a second sheet at a smaller scale.
Yeah, we do actually have a second sheet, and I can add that information to this overall plan.
But as such, the signs should probably be around that.
Where would they be, around the road?
Somehow to indicate that area that is to be mowed once a year or twice a year.
That would be a different kind of sign, which is fine. Yeah.
But in some way of identifying those areas so that it doesn't become lawn next year.
Yeah, so I think our intention
So there would be
was-
two sets of signs. There'd be the buffer zone sign at the permanent limited disturbance, and then what?
We haven't done signs for that before.
We've never done signs for limited cutting.
Yeah,
And the type of cutting, I don't think it's practical to put signs out there for
no.
that.
Tell him.
I just did.
It all comes back to nobody told me so.
Yeah.
So depends how we accept nobody told me so scenarios. If we accept them, fine. If we feel that people should pay attention to what they agreed to and abide by it, then reminder I think is appropriate.
Could it be put in writing in the order of conditions? In
They lose
perpetuity?
the order conditions, nobody reads it, it's
Right.
it's read once and gone.
Plans need to be made as absolutely crystal clear as possible. It's gonna be in the order of conditions as well, but people rarely read the order of conditions.
5 years from now.
5 years from now, they get the plan, that's what everybody goes to.
Yeah, 5 years from now, whoever happens to buy that house says, right, look at this nice field, I'm gonna mow it down so my kids can play baseball out there, and I'm gonna mow it every week. I mean, and they're not gonna read any orders of conditions or anything else. So,
So there probably should still be signs of the permanent limit of disturbance, but the complaint calls out that you're able to cut the wet meadow portion 1-2 times a year, probably the driest time of the year.
Think about it.
I think that's right.
I do too.
You're still looking for those signs, basically where I had them, but also a different sign at that permanent limit of disturbance.
I don't know, we had one for it, and one of them didn't think it was practical.
Maybe not every 50 feet, but maybe a couple of them, just,
Where would you put them, and what would it say?
After
Well-
the brush hog mows it down over the first year.
The only other place you could put it is around the perimeter of the road.
And I agree, there should be something, but I don't know how to practically make it work.
You know what, here's an idea, is, all down here is pretty much just field all the way up the road, so I don't see how it's really necessary. But let's say, once we get up into here with the edge of the woods, or the vegetated area, we have signs around here that somehow say stop mowing or something like that. No mowing beyond this point.
At the tree line.
At the tree line, you know, and you're gonna have a little strip between the wetland and permanent limit disturbance all along this area. So maybe you have that second set of signs along the wood line that says no mowing beyond this point.
or
Or,
seasonal mowing only, because that's what you are allowing them to do, is to maintain the meadow,
meadow
which means seasonal mowing.
only. So you'd have, signs at the wood line saying no seasonal mowing beyond this point? Or-
No, along the wood lines is your normal signs. And around your field, you have a few signs that says wetland meadow, seasonal mowing only.
well, seasonable could be any time from May on. You'd have to,
At least there's a sign that somebody can say, I didn't see it and I didn't know it. So, or you can make it a whole book. You can attach a book to the sign with a string. That includes all the bylaws, regulations, and times, dates, and what equipment you can use to mow with. But
Well,
let's move on.
Along the
could
permanent
say
limit
twice a
disturbance,
year.
you're gonna
Once a
have
year.
the lawn. You're gonna have the sign say only seasonal mowing beyond this point. And then you probably have maybe have a second set at the wood line saying the same thing. No seasonal mowing beyond this point.
Why don't we let them
I'm confused
figure
on
it
the
out?
wood line. Why would you have a sign that says anything about mowing along the wood line? I mean, you
So
really,
there's no encroachment into the wooded area. Because
and that's buffer zone?
well, they're gonna be allowed to mow the actual wetland
Up to,
up to the wood line,
Yeah.
which is also wetland.
yeah, so why not have a regular conservation sign at the woodland? No bordering woodlands,
touch.
the sign, no trespassing, and all that good stuff. And then just, we're addressing how to identify the area that can be mowed seasonally.
Okay, so along permanent limit
We should have the
disturbance,
term seasonal.
only seasonal mowing beyond this point. And then at the wood line, no disturbance beyond this point. Got it?
I have a problem with seasonal, because you need to be more specific than that. If it's only gonna be once or twice a year, seasonal, you know, it could be from May to October.
Well, let's take out the word mow, because that kind of connotates lawn. How about hay, even though it's not hay, according to
Cutting,
Chairman?
how about cutting?
Cutting, okay.
In fine print, you can put the dates that you can cut.
Okay.
Lower right-hand corner.
Got that, Travis?
Seasonal cutting at the permanent limit of disturbance.
Yeah, seasonal cutting only beyond this point. And then you're gonna have a second sign at the wood line that says no cutting beyond this point.
No disturb.
No disturbance. There you go.
Take out the word seasonal.
Where? At the wood line?
What, you still got that word seasonal in there. Like I said, you could be, you know,
No
just say
cutting is
cutting
fine.
and then put the, you can do the dates or whatever. But anyway,
So for the cutting, the area that you're allowed to cut, how would you like it to read?
How
I'd
about
like to
just,
read
how about
wetland
saying
meadow.
to be maintained as a wet meadow?
Wetland meadow, cutting,
Wetland meadow,
once a year, twice a year, whatever you want.
cutting only?
cutting,
Maintained as a wetland meadow. How's that?
Yeah.
It's almost elegant.
Almost. To be maintained as a wet meadow.
I think it's got identified as a wet meadow. and
Yeah.
it's-
All right, so put up a sign at permanent limited disturbance that reads, to be maintained as a wet meadow, as wet meadow. There's no definition for wet meadow, that's why I'm asking.
You'll have to make one.
I have to put it in the order,
Right.
okay? All right. And the second one is at the wood line. Second set. Signs. That reads, no disturbance beyond this point. So you have the wood line shown on the plan, and did you get that from aerials?
We actually field surveyed some of it, the area right behind the proposed house. To have a good location on that. Some of the stuff that goes off-site is from an area.
I mean, for this area, we're just talking about, you know, this.
Typically, whenever there's a
basically cut it
well,
off here, right? Something like that.
Typically,
Yeah.
whenever there's a well,
So
there's
we're
a
talking
detail to put
here,
extra
All the
stuff
way
around the
down,
well.
then to here, then
I
you're
don't know
gonna
if
be
the
allowed to
detail's
cut
on the
basically
drawing.
all this, and all this down here.
And those signs, I will start
The
here.
one that they bring in.
Reference on how many.
Ask
I
'em.
put one here, one in the middle, and one up.
Every 50 feet, including wherever there's a jog
At the wood line, you're talking.
at the wood line. So start at the corner here, or where the wood line meets the property line.
Yep.
Every 50 feet, and if there's a jog, put it at the jog, even if it's less than 50 feet. That's been the standard.
Does your drawing or will your revised drawing show details of controlling the sludge created from drilling?
For the well, you mean?
Yep.
Yeah, I can show you details. Typically, I'll put a couple straw bales behind that. It's kind of a slurry pit, if that's acceptable.
Not straw bales,
We'll see.
biodegradable.
Yeah, all those are.
We'll see what your design is, and we'll tell you if
Well,
it's
I'd rather
acceptable.
get your input now.
Well, we need something that to control the sludge coming out of the well, particularly seeing as how it's that close to the wetlands.
The wattles would be easier for you, I would think.
Yeah.
You're gonna have outside.
And usually it's a
Second set.
double roll.
Anyone else have a comment on this? Do we have the motion to continue already?
No. I don't think so. You want to continue to,
Next meeting, you think you'd be ready?
September 6th at 7:50.
make a motion to continue to September 5th at 7:50? 6th, 7:50.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Now, if I get revised plans, can I email them to be reviewed prior to that meeting to make sure everything is?
Absolutely. Send them to Wanda, send them to me. I'd say it's Wanda's job to forward to the entire commission.
Yep.
Okay, very good. Here's the green cards. Thank you, folks, for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Duncan Simons. You and Duncan Simons.
We also have 160 Dodge Hill Road that I think I gave you, for signing the certificate of compliance.
What do we deal with 213, seeing as people are here,
Yeah, 'cause I don't know.
sitting patiently for a while? You good.
I thought they were a lot earlier.
What was this for?
Who's this?
We'll leave it at that. 213
Yep.
performed the inspection, and they submitted the necessary paperwork from the engineer, and I went to the site. Everything looks to be in conformance. They have, the big thing is they had to put up plants around the perimeter of the septic system there. To compliance, the only advice I gave to Mr. Morse was that he's growing a garden and has some exposed soil that's technically it's outside of jurisdiction. I just told him to make sure that keeps that soil stable, so it doesn't go into the well and ruin the big storm. Otherwise, he's good for COC.
Make a motion to issue a certificate of compliance for 213 Burbank Road, Timothy Morse.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thanks for signing the plan too, Joyce.
You can leave now.
I'm disappointed, disappointed now.
Till next week. Okay.
Do they have any questions for us while they're here before next week, since they've waited for?
Yeah, they're waiting for this.
Unless they're selling the houses.
What's that?
Unless they're selling the houses.
I gotta find this other.
You know, I'm glad you feel that way. 'Cause most people don't even
10 years.
even more. 3 owners later. I didn't even know about it.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, I don't have a file for this 160 Dodge Hill Road.
And the rain garden looks good. I told them they could.
Yeah.
They could rip
That's
up
the one you found, the open file for open order for the
Yeah.
septic system that my grandmother had installed about 17 years ago. So Andrews did do
They
A
did
letter.
I know, but
Is that
There's
something
nothing
on the agenda?
There's nothing on the agenda.
it's
supposed to be for
online.
citing us,
It was supposed to be,
COC.
yeah, it was supposed to be, but.
That was submitted to you when the plans were submitted for 159.
It's in a file.
Something you need help?
Put a reading this in my office yesterday, so
Just want to get it out.
Yep.
it could still be somewhere, I just don't know where. I'm gonna have to look for it.
What are we looking for?
I'm looking for the file for 160, a very old file,
160 what?
Dodge Hill.
Dodge Hill Road.
Property across from the barn, there was an open order on the septic
They
system.
asked about to sign the certificate, but I don't know where to find it.
Andrews did a letter
They did?
saying it was compliance, brought it in when they brought in the stuff for the barn at 159.
Never saw it.
Hold on a minute, let me just go look for a minute.
Before you do that, Wanda, have you got the routing slip for 14 Gavin Lane?
Yeah. This is the routing slip, this is the file. It's on an open order of conditions.
There's no, I don't
can
believe
wait.
there's any new construction. This is just they put an
No.
accessory apartment in.
Yes, but if it's too close to the wetlands, they need to tell us what they're doing, but, well, the issue I have with that is, on the original plans, it said future accessory apartment, but we don't have any information on it, and it would be like the famous bridge where we had bridge designed by others, and then we didn't investigate that, and it was a mess. So I'd like to know what they're doing. And how close to the wetlands, you know.
There's new construction
The-
involved, you're saying?
Yes, because we originally approved the plan for the house, and then there was just a little place on the side that said, future in-law apartment. But we don't have any details on the future in-law apartment. So, that's what I'd like to know.
And it's inside our jurisdiction?
I don't know.
Yeah, in the original plans in the house, it was just outside, but it came close, so we don't know how big that future thing is gonna be, which now they wanna build. So if we see the plans, maybe we can figure out whether they have to amend their order of conditions or not.
Is there a plan from the planning board?
I don't think they've been to planning board yet.
Do they even need to?
Yes.
Okay.
Because they,
I don't know what
I thought I had found it, and then, here it is. I have nothing. I have nothing on this. I can't even find the file in the vault or anything.
let's
This is
do
why I
one
don't
thing.
know.
Well, it wouldn't be
I've got a
involved.
number.
See
It
his,
would be new,
his
wouldn't it?
future in-law apartment, and it comes right up to the line.
Oh, that
I
file.
Now, is that within a 25? Oh, that's a home.
But do you have the COC request and letter?
So we
send
need to
them
know,
something?
you know, they didn't give any information on this. We need to know what,
If they sent it.
they're in the process of building the house now.
Did you put it in the 159 file, Wanda?
Or it could be that.
I'm wondering.
Because it was all submitted at the same time,
Oh, then that's what it is.
which was 2 weeks.
Because you were out
Tomorrow.
for 2 weeks, you know,
Here's-
it's around that time.
Here's a hand. Yeah, that's right, it was out. Here it is, right here.
I know, that's why we need
So
to
you have to put it in
know.
the wrong file, that's why.
Good thinking.
So I did not type it up. What I can do is just go grab a sign sheet. Give me a few minutes. And I'll
Well,
grab a sign sheet.
Is, first of,
What are you gonna do?
so there's a COC request, I think, it's right there.
Yeah.
Did it come along with a letter from any engineer?
Yeah.
Should go to Brandon for the board to read.
Okay, and then there's normally a site
Okay,
inspection.
make
to
copies.
trust to
Here's a
verify.
copy. Yeah, here's a copy.
Okay.
I can go get a print unless you want to do it at the next meeting.
Okay.
Depends on what you want to do. I have the request right here, but because I don't know where the file is.
Yeah, well, what I would do now, Wanda, is I would find the file in the vault.
It's not in there.
It's not, oh, so it's not in the vault.
I've looked for 2 weeks, not in there.
Does Andrew, think the Andrew survey might have a plan?
They did not originally do it.
They didn't do it.
And I guess, I'm
Oh,
gonna
they
guess.
did, they were given a set of plans to review, and they reviewed it in compliance with the plans. So the plans are what Wanda gave me from the file.
And that was from 159.
160 Dodge Hill.
So you think that Andrews would be willing to scan that plan and send it over to me so I can do a trust but verify inspection?
Well, I can ask them.
Can, or I can see if I can
It says
find another copy.
159. Yeah, I think that one I gave you was out of the other file. But it wasn't from the vault. I've looked in there.
Goes
and I
back to an
think-
engineering company that's retired or out of business or something.
As
Was
usual.
it Cox?
Cox, yes.
Who is it?
Cox.
Cox.
Oh,
That was the
that's
file it
another
was
name.
from. So all we can do is,
I tell you what, just, if you
do it the
can,
next meeting.
try to ask Andrews if they can forward me a copy of the old plan or whatever they have. I'll take a visit, and we'll have this resolved for the next meeting.
And I will look for a copy too to see if I can.
Thank you.
Before we lose this, what does it go?
Wanda, here's this copy that you just gave us.
That's the original.
That's the
When's the
original. As far as the minutes go, I started looking them over today and doing them, and then I went on site visits with Brandon. had been sent to me, and my new computer put it in the trash or the junk mail or whatever, so I didn't discover it till afternoon time, so we will have to wait till the next meeting.
Yeah, and then I didn't get one back from you, so
I know, that's what I just explained.
I couldn't do anything.
What's the unexpected business? 115 Leland Hill.
Okay, yeah.
That's
I
something I
found-
gotta talk to you about
Yeah,
too.
a potential violation get called in. I went out today and made a street side observation. Let me pull it up.
Okay, this here is. This is, was in the office with Jen and the planning board, and all the stuff that's going on there. Joyce went out to look at it. Stone wall has been moved. However, she said that, that because it's not a scenic road, she can't really do anything about, because it's in our jurisdiction of the wetland, we can.
Now, is it this sliver right here?
Yes.
Okay.
And what's happening, it's gone into this lot,
Yeah.
into this lot. It's this person over here that owns it, and this is
Leland
the
Hill Estates over
enforcement
here.
order should go.
Let me zoom out a little bit,
Right.
give you some context.
That the enforcement
Entrance to
order should
Leland
go
Hill
to-
Estates, then it makes the first curve right here. So behind all the houses on the right-hand side,
It's behind number 14 and 16.
there's a wetland in here.
Mhm.
So this one is on the other side of the wetland next to Leland Hill Road. And there's most definitely machinery in there, clearing brush and doing some grading.
And they
pushing
knocked
things
out the
around.
stone wall.
Yeah, well,
which is
stone
a-
wall, stone wall, but I can tell you
it's a
definitively
line.
that they work right up to the edge of the wetland. So I think it's
Yep.
reasonable to
It-
write a letter or issue an
Well,
enforcement order,
Jen said she
whatever
would
you
help
want to do.
me do the enforcement order, because she went out there, she has pictures. She's also found that this is town property. So he has done work on town property.
So they
She
know
will
who it
see-
was that did it?
She'll see, yeah, wait.
So who is it that did it?
She'll see Jim
To put it on the
downstairs
record.
tomorrow. It's right here. His name is, Daniel Snyder.
Daniel Snyder.
He's the one who is listed. It's a kind of a long story. It's been, the John Snyder passed away. It was with his wife Eileen, who owned the property. She finally signed it over to the 5 sons. Daniel was a person living there, and apparently he is the one that's done the work.
Is he the brother?
So, no, he's
Or
one
son?
of the sons.
One of the sons.
Yeah, the sons. So the stepmother sold it to the 5 brothers for $1 and gave it back to him, and Daniel was the one that apparently is living there now.
I hope it's
And
not
he's
the
the one
John
that
Snyder
did
I
the
know.
So,
Okay.
and so he's doing the work. Jen
Not if
suggested
he's
that
dead.
maybe we possibility put in an enforcement order to stop him and have the police department deliver it tomorrow. Because there's an issue with this.
That's
So,
up to you.
it keeps on going.
Sounds good to me.
What I have it, all you need to sign this,
Okay with
and
that.
then Jen and I will
Sure.
work over the rest of it tomorrow, and then I will have it delivered. They said that he's home all the time, so he'll be there.
Who's going to make the motion to issue the enforcement
I make a
order?
motion to issue an enforcement order on 115 Leland, is it Leland Hill Estates?
No,
No.
it's
No, Leland Hill.
115 Leland Hill Road. I wrote the wrong word on there, sorry.
Leland Hill Road.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Can you see it clearly from the road?
Yes, you can.
Oh,
yes.
yes, absolutely.
Mhm.
You can
Yeah,
see the
Jen
skunk
went and took the
cabbage right
pictures
next to
today.
the cleared area, looking down the hill.
Nowhere.
What's the earthen dam that this,
That's another issue.
that,
That's another
That-
dam?
Actually, that is the, one that you took care of, number 2, where Henry Lane was in here.
Nope, that's it.
Oh.
You see, I wrote on it,
No, it doesn't matter. Doesn't matter.
7 PM.
Okay.
Let's see, I'm lost here now. You did the routing slip.
What is this?
What is that?
That's his signature.
That's my signature.
He's proud of his name, that's why he writes it like that.
Don't ask.
Print your name next to that.
That's what somebody told me once.
Print my name.
Print your name next to it so it can be read.
If that's your signature, just pass it along.
That is my signature. That's,
I had to change mine for this.
I gotta see this.
Look at,
That's
a
his signature.
two-year-old can do better than that.
actually looks like
How
your
can you read? You can't
Listen,
read it.
sign it and pass
He
it
was a
along.
doctor in his former life.
Moving right along.
Yeah, right.
But you should,
Hey, it's past
why
8:30.
why write something if you can't read it?
that's my signature, because nobody else can write the same
That's
one.
why I said you can put your,
Some people have an
Hey,
extra
hey,
signature.
this isn't school.
well, I was a teacher, so.
That's true.
Okay.
Past
80
tense.
Worcester Providence. What's
No,
You
I'm
missed the
still a teacher.
opportunity on him.
What's up with 80 Worcester Providence?
I thought you just scribbled under your name.
Makes you feel young again.
Is that the
I feel
email we
young
got
every
today
day.
about the guy passed away or something, and is that 80 Worcester Providence?
No,
No, that's the one we
that's
were
the one we've
just
been
talking
talking
That
about
is,
forever.
so I was supposed to meet with the project manager, Charlie Roberts, today,
Yep.
And
4
it's,
PM. And he emailed me this morning, said his father passed away yesterday, and, his regrets he couldn't do it. He gave me the email of one of his associates, who I've never met or talked to, and so I sent him a email, which I forwarded to the commission as well, let him know, let you guys know I'm on the ball.
Yep.
We've had circumstances. And I think the site will be fine until the next fundraiser.
Is that the one that's got a cease and desist?
Yes. Yeah, it was released.
Yeah, so are we doing anything? with it?
Technically, they have complied with the request, so it can be lifted, but the erosion controls and sedimentation controls are just not adequate. We need to continue to work with them to beef things up, stabilize the soil and the slope, and to beef up the erosion controls at the bottom of the slope.
But I thought you also mentioned there's some engineering issues, that the riprap swale may not be properly designed to accommodate the water.
I'm not an engineer.
I understand that's why we suggested you thought you saw a problem with the water running down the swale.
There was a stream running down the middle of the swale, surface.
And you thought that might be a problem, so rather than be an engineer, we thought that we'd ask their engineer to look into that and see what they could to resolve the problem.
Well, the biggest problem I had was with the alleged grass swale, which is really just weeds and dirt. That needs to be brought up to where it needs to be.
I would suggest that when you talk to the associate,
Yeah.
just say that we're tired of this, and we're getting ready to issue a cease and desist on the project, if they can't get it into compliance. Sound like a reasonable course of events?
It does. When I spoke to Charlie Roberts a couple of Fridays ago, he says the reason why they haven't been able to do more is because it's been so wet. Take it as you want, but it's dried out now and we're still in the growing season.
Let our feelings be known.
Okay.
Thanks.
We don't have much
I
on
think so.
the new track sheet, so
So what about 192 and 198
I've
Manchester
heard
Road?
nothing
Oh,
back.
thank you.
We went there
Went
today.
today. You're right, the leaves need to be cleaned out of the little basin next to the Tanshug Road at 192. So I would follow up with which one is it on that one? Porter Stevens or the other one?
Not Port Stevens 92.
192, so that's really the only thing. We walk the rest of it, and I actually think that it's safe to pull up the erosion controls, because it's well stabilized, there's grass everywhere, there's no bare spots.
On which one, both?
192.
192 only.
Okay.
The only thing he needs to do is pick up the leaves out of that basin, which is yearly maintenance. 198 is a different story.
Now, just stay with that for a second. How do we communicate this to this gentleman?
You want to write a letter?
I don't know, I'm just it's fine, we talk about it, just would like to have it closed out and not see it on the next minutes, that's all.
Notice of intent
Agenda.
is phone number. I can call him directly. Okay. I will call him directly.
No, I just would like to get it cleaned up, that's all.
198 still has some sedimentation issues. They haven't done anything with their erosion controls. They're in terrible, terrible shape. And there's a spot where we already had an issue with sediment going over the silt fence and into the buffer zone, which they cleaned up once. Now we have the problem starting all over again. Not as bad, but there's sediment going over the silt fence, and because their lawn's just not established yet. They haven't done very much they haven't done very much to establish the lawn yet, so there's still erosion coming off the hill. So that one, I think, I recommend the commission amp up the pressure.
Yep.
Because you've already sent them a letter. There's been no response, right, Wanda?
No.
No response, so
Could you refresh my memory on what the letter actually said?
I don't have it in here.
I should have a
You
copy.
got a copy? I don't have the files either.
Upon a recent inspection of the property for the above referenced project, the Conservation Commission may note that erosion and sanitation controls need to be refreshed and/or replaced until such time the certificate of compliance is issued. Also, please respond in regards to the progress with the conservation restriction, which must be completed within a 3-year time period. The order of conditions is valid for the findings of fact section of special order of conditions. Wanda, didn't you hear something back from the lawyer on that? Do you remember hearing back on progress of the conservation restriction?
Yeah, I think they didn't want to do it or something.
We know they didn't want to do it, but that was part of the negotiation.
Not the file, I couldn't look at it.
I'll follow up personally.
Wait a minute, I can go get the file.
Are they still doing construction there, or are they pretty much done and just?
They're pretty much done,
Not
they
finishing.
just need to stabilize things.
And once again, they didn't, my issues with the plastic on them.
Well, those were before we had 12-inch biodegradable, I think.
No.
No?
Have biodegradable, maybe 8-inch. I'll go back to the annual inspection at the pre-construction meeting.
Right.
Maybe we should schedule that and ask them to have their engineer there.
Schedule another meeting with them or their representative?
Yep.
Okay?
And just point out that the water's still open, they need to have the, you know the drill. And we'll have to send them a bill for it. If you submit that, we'll get that in the same.
I will check to see how many funds are left.
Yep, that's the only tool we have.
Anything else?
Make a motion to adjourn?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.